What is up, guys? It's Alex the Magician here, back for another Heroes 3 tier list video. And in this one, I'm going to be doing another town tier list, but this time the towns are going to be ranked purely on my opinion on how interesting and fun I think the towns are. So this has nothing to do with how strong I think the town is or, how good it is in a PvP matchup, just purely based on how interesting it is and how fun I think it is to play personally. So yeah, super opinionated, super biased, this tier list, even more so than any other tier list, but do let me know what you guys think. I'm curious to see if any of you guys agree or disagree, or maybe you think that some of the towns are more fun than I think they are. So do let me know what you guys think in the comments below. And as usual, guys, I would highly appreciate it if you guys give me ideas for new videos that I can do. I usually do get good ideas from you guys, and I have made several videos based on your suggestions, so I highly appreciate those. Do please keep those coming in the comments below as well. All right. So without further ado, let's just get into this. We're going to go from the bottom up. So at the very bottom, I'm going to rank Castle. And Castle just has not really been, my favorite town ever since Heroes 2. And I think probably my bias, like in Heroes 3, I find it a little bit more fun and a little bit more interesting. But in Heroes 2, it's just, same as with Heroes 3, it's just humans, right? So I just find the concept slightly boring. All your units are, essentially humans with a sword, humans with a spear, humans with a bow, humans on a horse. And, with Heroes 3, you do at least have an angel who's technically a robot. And so that's kind of interesting. And, the zealots are also slightly interesting. But other than that, everything is just, it's just too straightforward, too kind of bland, if you will. And I think with Heroes 2, it was even more so. Like their tier 7 was the Crusader, right? So you didn't have anything like the Angel for the Haven faction. And I think probably that bias just kind of carried forward for me to Heroes 3. So yeah, I just feel like it's not necessarily the most interesting faction. It's definitely not the most fun to play either, I would say. Like, there are interesting things about it. Like, going Archangels, of course, is always cool. But like I said, this isn't about how strong the town actually is. It's just about how interesting it is to play and, how interesting the concept and the units and whatnot are. And I just feel like Castle is probably the least imaginative and not necessarily the most fun to play because for me personally, I enjoy units that have more kind of like a fantasy twist on them. So yeah, I think for that reason, Castle is my lowest. All right, the next one may be a little bit surprising, since I did mention that I, do like kind of unusual and sort of fantasy type units. But the next one is going to be Necro. And for Necro, the reason that I have them ranked here is because I kind of get a weird feeling every time I play Necro. I don't know what it is, but maybe it's undead. Maybe it's like me looking at undead. And again, this started for me in Heroes 2 as well. Whenever I played Necro, I don't know, I just felt kind of gross. I can't really describe it any better than that. But whenever I play them, like skeletons getting raised from the dead and whatnot, and everything is like weird looking zombies and things like that. Like you had mummies back in Heroes 2 also, which look kind of weird. Necro does have some interesting units. Some, like the Bone Dragons are kind of cool. The Liches and Power Liches are cool. The Vampires, the Dread Knights I do love. But I don't know. There's just a weird feeling that I get by playing with undead. So I don't know what it is, but like the fact that you get negative morale for all your living units is also not that great. And the fact that the gameplay is also not necessarily the most imaginative. It's like in 90% of cases, get as many skeletons as you possibly can, at least when it comes to JC, right? So, it's not necessarily the most straightforward. It is a little bit challenging to accomplish, but the concept in, just get as many skeletons as you can, is not necessarily the most complex either. So, yeah, those are kind of my reasons for ranking Necro as the second to worst town. So, all right, next I'm going to rank Stronghold. Now, Stronghold for me is, I mean, it's not that bad. The units are kind of cool. You do have some interesting stuff, like the Behemoth idea is kind of interesting. Ogre Magi are cool. The Rocks are cool. The Cyclops are alright. I don't necessarily like the first tier, first, second, and third tier, like the Goblins, the Wolf Raiders, and the Orcs. But I think what makes me rank Stronghold kind of this low is the fact that they're just a little bit difficult to play. So, especially when it comes to the early game on JC, it's definitely challenging to play well with Stronghold because your units are really squishy. And even when you get behemoths are relatively squishy as well. So, for that reason, it kind of makes it a little bit difficult. And I'm still not good with Stronghold. It's probably still my worst town because, yeah, I just don't really like playing it that much. I just feel like it's a little bit difficult to pick up, and I don't know, I just don't really get that excited playing Stronghold. While you do have some interesting units, the entire kind of theme, you got like the town itself doesn't even look good, it's kind of like this beige gray, and you got like the terrain that's also kind of like this lifeless sort of wasteland or whatever it's called. That's also just kind of like grayish, grayish beige color or whatever. And I just kind of feel like, that's that's almost the feeling that I get by playing Stronghold, that it's just kind of like this barren wasteland that's all like gray and beige, and you just got these hardcore barbarians who are like trying to survive in that environment. So I don't know, just not necessarily the most fun town for me. The concept, the creativity of the concept, I would maybe give them like a B minus on that, but I just don't really enjoy playing Stronghold all that much personally. All right, next I'm gonna rank Fortress. So as far as Fortress goes, I would probably rank it a little bit higher. I do like Fortress. But I think as far as the gameplay goes on JC, it's just a little bit too straightforward. And, what makes it straightforward is the fact that you have that bad terrain, the worst terrain penalty in the game. So you're pretty much just limited to farming hives. You can definitely farm pickets and conses and whatnot if they're close to the road, but really, you usually just want to snowball your hives, maybe upgrade the Wyvern to Wyvern Monarchs, and that's the standard kind of gameplay for Fortress. And that's usually what you want to do in, I don't know, maybe like 90 or like 80 to 90% of cases. And if you don't get that, then, I don't know, try to go for maybe Hydras if you get Hydra dwellings, or try to get like pickets and conses if they're close to the road. But you usually don't want to do that, because dragging that stuff through the swamp when you don't have wings or pathfind boots or pathfinding is not going to be very good. But as far as the units go, I do like them. I do like most of them. Hydras are cool. I like those in Heroes 2. The Mighty Gorgons are cool. Wyvern are pretty cool. Even the Lizard Men and Lizard Warriors I find kind of cool. Basilisks are cool. So, yeah, overall, I do like the concept, and it fits. It fits with the theme of the swamp, like Hydras living in the swamp and whatnot. So I do like all of that. But, yeah, I just find the gameplay a bit too straightforward. I do have fun playing them. Beastmasters are really good heroes to have. You have a good chance of earth magic. You have good defense that you're gonna get. So it is a really solid town to play, and I do have fun doing it. But I just wish there was a little bit of room to be a little bit more creative with the gameplay, because, like I said, it's usually just hives. Try to snowball those, and and yeah, you know, don't farm pickets or conses if they're too far into the swamp and you don't have some way to deal with that terrain penalty. So I guess for that reason, like if it wasn't for that, if if there was more room to be creative with the gameplay, I probably would have ranked Fortress higher. All right, and the next one is going to be Rampart. So Rampart, you know, I kind of like and I kind of dislike. You guys have seen me kind of bag on Rampart before, and I really don't like it. Personally, I don't like playing it. I don't like the town itself, and I feel like there are a few problems with it. And probably one of my highest gripes, one of my biggest gripes with Rampart is the fact that it is difficult to build dragons, right? So if you want to try to build your dragons on week 1, you need to commit to that right away, and you need to, you know, skip the Centaur upgrade, you need to skip the Grand Elf upgrade if you don't find a hill fort. And only then you can build the dragons on day 7. So it kind of limits you. It kind of limits you in your options, and you know, as far as the gameplay itself goes, so what I do like about Rampart, what I do like about it is the units. I do like the concept, you know, like I mentioned before, I like fantasy type units, and dragons have always been my favorite ever since Heroes 2. So you know, the dragons are cool, the unicorns are cool, Pegasi are right, centaurs are cool, probably the dwarves is the unit that I like the least, but the grand elves are also cool. So the units are nice. But as far as the gameplay, you also have some good heroes. You have like Mephala, you have Kier, you have Giselle. It's a hard counter to all spellcasters. So there is some potential, and when you can get gold dragons or green dragons at least, it is fun. I do enjoy doing that. I also like getting a unicorn power stack, but there are definitely some problems with the gameplay. I feel like it's hard to get going on JC. It's hard to start taking, you know, hives or pickets or conses or anything like that. You really need to try to snowball with dwellings, or maybe with starting with like a mini cons or a small picket or something like that, or a small hive. So it's not the easiest to do. So, and for whatever reason, for me personally, I actually have really bad luck rolling earth magic on rangers. I honestly get it maybe 1 or 2 times out of 10, and I literally thought when I made my Rampart like overview video, I literally thought that rangers had a bad chance of rolling earth magic because of that, because I never get it. And then somebody actually pointed it out. Somebody commented that, hey, what are you talking about? I always get earth magic on them. And I was like, really? Is that the case? And I looked it up, and I saw that it was actually like a 45% chance of getting earth magic. So I must just be really unlucky, because literally, you know, I pointed out on my stream all the time. I'm like, look, guys, I never freaking get it. I'm not lying. This is, you know, and that's why I thought that they had a bad chance. So for whatever reason, I'm just unlucky with rolling earth magic on rangers. And that sort of adds to why I don't necessarily think that the gameplay is that fun. Obviously, it's my thing, but hey, that's the way it is for me. I don't know what it is. I'm cursed with Rampart, I suppose. Maybe they know that I hate them or something. But other than that, yeah, so while I don't hate the gameplay that much, it's just slightly challenging. You know, like I already mentioned, it's slightly challenging in getting going, but I do like the units, but once again, you know, with the dragons that are like my favorite units, it's hard to build them. And, you know, unlike with Dungeon, where you can get 2 dragons with the portal right away and you can start snowballing with that, with Rampart, you know, the earliest you can get the 2nd dragon, well, if you only have 1 external dragon cliffs, would be day 7, and, you know, it's just not that viable in a lot of cases. So those are also kind of my problems with it. While I do like the units, you know, I do think the gameplay is alright, the fact that it's hard to build dragons, the fact that it's kind of slow to get going, and the fact that I personally never get earth magic on rangers makes me put Rampart a little bit lower than I would have if it didn't have those issues in my mind. All right, so next I am gonna rank Cove. And I'm also going to rank Inferno. So these top 2 tiers, I'm actually not going to separate them. So usually, you know, the towns that are on the left of the tier are higher for me than the ones on the right. So like Necro, I find more interesting than Castle, for example. But the top 2 tiers, when I was thinking about them, I really had a hard time separating them. So they're basically going to be on the same level. So the A tier and the S tier, you know, the towns within that tier, I'm just gonna say that they're around the same for me. All right, so as far as Cove goes, so Cove is the newest town that was added to, you know, in the Hoda expansion, and I do like it. I do like Cove overall. I like the units. I like the concepts. You know, you got the Nicks that are ridiculous. You've got the Sea Dogs that are also ridiculous. You also have you know, the sea serpents, which are kind of cool, difficult to build, but kind of interesting. You have the captain class, which is kind of cool as well. And it's sort of an interesting gameplay also because you are not necessarily good at taking hives in the early game. So unlike you are in the swamp, but unlike with Fortress, you also do want to snowball the hives, but you're not that good at starting the snowball. So you have to get a little bit more creative. You're good at taking pickets with Cassiopeia, you're good at taking Kansas, and you can take dwellings. So you kind of have to play around that and, you know, and then try to start snowballing the hive. So I do feel like it sort of forces you to be a bit creative, and I do kind of enjoy playing Cove, I would say. You know, there's something satisfying even about getting like a Sea Dog stack and just headshotting like crystal dragons or something. And the Nyx warriors in particular are also really satisfying to use because they're just tanky as hell with that 60% attack reduction ability. So I do feel like it's interesting, and you do have some good heroes. Cassiopeia with tactics is always nice to use in the early game. You have Corcus, the offense specialist. Eovacious with that clone specialty is super satisfying to use, especially if you get the water magic on him and you can clone like angels and cyclops and wyvern and stuff. So overall, quite solid, you know, so solid heroes, solid units. The big disadvantage for them is obviously the terrain penalty, which, you know, is definitely frustrating to deal with. But I guess if it didn't have that terrain penalty, it would just be a little bit too OP because, you know, with Cassiopeia, you can even take a maxi picket on day 1 with a good roll of nymphs, maybe some additional external nymph dwellings. So you know, it can definitely, it would have been pretty OP if you can just go and farm a lot of pickets and you don't care about the terrain penalties. So, you know, I can kind of see the terrain, you know, sort of balancing them out a little bit. So, yeah, overall, I do really like the town. I do like the gameplay. You know, I'm not that great with it as I haven't played it that much, but I certainly do enjoy playing it. Unlike with, you know, Stronghold, for example. Like Stronghold, I'm not that good with, and I just don't really enjoy it. You know, with Cove, I do enjoy playing it. Well, you know, as long as the game doesn't go too badly, of course. All right, and as far as Inferno goes, so I know some of you are going to be happy that I finally have Inferno close to the top tier in a tier list. So once again, this is not about how strong the towns are. This is about how interesting they are in terms of, you know, their units and in terms of their gameplay. For me personally. So with Inferno, I do enjoy playing it, and I do like the units. I do think the concept is pretty cool. I like the units. I like most of them. Like the Magogs are cool. They're fun to use. The demons, you know, or demon farming is a pretty interesting mechanic as well. And the Pit Lords themselves are pretty cool units, pretty strong, and with the Ifrit are nice. The devils are really cool. I don't know. There's something about devils that I really like. I can't really put my finger on it, but yeah, overall, I do like Inferno, and yeah, they're pretty fun to use. Even though the heroes are not amazing, you know, demoniacs and heretics are, you know, not the best hero classes by any means. And one thing that I dislike about Inferno is the terrain. Just the fact is that it's so dark. When you're in battle, you cannot see like the movement grid, or, you know, how far like the enemy can move, how far you can move. So makes it you have to kind of like get close to the screen and squint, and for that reason I kind of feel like it's a little bit difficult, hard on the eyes, and also you don't have crypts, which is kind of annoying. It's like, as if Inferno needed more weaknesses. They just don't give them crypts. But overall, yeah, like I said, I do like the units, I do like the concept behind it, and I do like the actual gameplay. And yeah, I don't know, there's something satisfying about using Magogs in the early game. There's something satisfying about taking the Ifrit and the Devil dwellings and getting a power stack. And overall, I also like, I usually play with Kalth, and I do like using him. He usually will be pretty strong by the time you break, and even if you don't have mass slow, you will usually be able to deal with whatever you're fighting. And also with his scouting, I do enjoy that on, my main hero, even though it's not necessarily the best skill to have on your main hero, but since he starts with scouting, it's kind of cool because when you get into the desert, for example, you can see a lot of it, which can definitely change the game for you, whereas with heroes without scouting, you wouldn't have had that. And you also have Fiona, who's the scouting specialist, which is always nice if you happen to get her, or not the specialist, sorry, but she starts with advanced scouting, and if you can get a quick learning stone or a quick 1k XP from a treasure chest, you can get expert scouting right away and get a lot of scouting information as well. So yeah, I would say all of those things combined is why I have them in the A tier. I do feel like they're pretty fun. I do have fun playing Inferno. All right, and the top tier, as I've mentioned already, I'm not going to separate these. They're basically, around the same level for me. Just had a really hard time picking one over the other. So it's Conflux, Dungeon, and Tower, which may surprise some of you. So let's talk about Conflux first, I suppose. So as far as Conflux goes, I do really like elementals, like I've already mentioned before. I do like fantasy type units more so than the regular kind of like humanoid or human type units. And with Conflux, I feel like the elemental concept is probably one of the most intriguing ones for me. I do like the elementals. The magic elementals are cool. The phoenixes and firebirds I kind of like. It's kind of annoying that the elementals are usually a bit weak for their level. Besides the air elementals, you got water elementals that are pretty weak, tier 3. And you got the earth elementals, which are weak tier 5 as well. So, not necessarily great in terms of strength. Firebirds are pretty weak tier 7, but just the concept overall, and how they're drawn and how you use them is pretty cool. And of course, well, you have other things going for you, like the Magic University, which is really nice. You always, you don't have to worry about actually rolling Earth Magic. You can just buy that. You have, a couple of other things going for you as well. If you can ever get the Grail, it's amazing. You get all spells. Well, of course, you do have to build the Mage Guild of that particular level in Horn of the Abyss to actually get the spells of that level, but still, I find that nice, and the fact that you also have artifact merchants is kind of cool. So overall, pretty nice in terms of the town, pretty nice in terms of the concept. I do feel like it's pretty interesting and creative. And the gameplay itself, of course, with Luna, I personally usually use Luna, and I just have so much fun playing with Luna and, just abusing her firewall. I mean, I've made tons of videos on Luna, and anything that can take a maxi picket with expert fire magic and just 3 spell power and just like 18 mana, I mean, it's pretty friggin' OP. And there's something so satisfying about that, like when you're playing Luna and when you're using that firewall, it just feels like you're breaking the game, it feels like you're cheating even though you're not. So, I do enjoy that. Ever since I learned how to play with Luna, I've enjoyed that immensely. And I don't know, just like I'm pretty excited every time that I actually play Luna. And even if you don't use Luna, you do have some other good heroes. You have Grindan, who can get mass slow pretty quickly. You have Lebetha, who also starts with Earth Magic. You have, some decent might heroes like Monair and Fewer. So overall, I do think that you have, some potential, even if you don't want to use Luna. But, I personally would use Luna just about every time. But I think that there's a lot of room for creativity. There's a lot of options for you to utilize even if you don't use Luna. So yeah, overall, I really, really like this town. I really, really like the gameplay. I have a lot of fun playing Conflux. All right, as far as dungeon goes, dungeon, I would probably say is here because of sort of my nostalgic value that I add to it. Because first, when I played Heroes 3 back like 20 years ago, I played the Armageddon's Blade campaign, and I also played the Heroes Chronicles one, but I didn't like Fortress as much as Dungeon. And then when I played Armageddon's Blade, it just kind of stuck with me, and also because you get to use Azure Dragons in that campaign, that's pretty fun. But yeah, I would say for me personally, I don't necessarily feel like it's my favorite town overall. Like, I feel like it could have been a little bit better. Like, if Rampart dragons were easier to build, I would probably have Rampart around the same level, maybe even higher. With Dungeon, just the fact that they're underground, I don't know, like the fact that it's dungeon and it's underground kind of like puts me off just a little bit. But having said that, like I said, I do really like dungeon. I do think that it's really fun to play. The units are great, dragons, probably black dragons are my favorite units in the game. You also have other interesting units. The beholders are cool. The Medusas, even though they're not that amazing, I do like them. Minotaurs are great. Manticores are all right, especially if you can upgrade them. And, starting with troglodytes, if you start with Shakti on Jebus Cross, it's always really fun. It's really fun to get that tempo in the early game. Harpies are pretty interesting too. You can do crazy stuff with them, like abuse experimental shops and whatnot. And as far as, a dungeon, like the gameplay goes, the heroes are amazing. Overlords are probably the best hero class. Great chance of earth magic, good skills overall. Even if you don't play with Shakti, you got other really good ones, like you got Gunner. You also have the Warlocks, Jadit and Alamar, who have Resurrect. That's also really good. So overall, really, really solid all around. And it's super satisfying to get dragons in the early game and portal the dragons. Definitely my gripe is the fact that the dragons are pretty much impossible to build. You're really not going to build dragons as dungeon on week 1, because if you do that, then you have to skip the troglodyte upgrade, and you also have to skip the portal, which is pretty much impossible, so you're sacrificing the second dragon that you would get from the portal anyway for kind of a longer term gain. But usually, especially when it comes to Jebus Cross, the longer term is not really gonna pay off that much. It's really all about the early and mid game tempo. So getting that Portal of Summoning, if you find a Dragon Cave, is pretty much essential. So for that reason, like if it wasn't for that, then maybe it would actually be at the top for me. But overall, still, I really like it. I think it's really interesting, and I think it's really, really fun to play. It's versatile. You can do anything with it. You can go for hives, conses, pickets, or XP shops, what have you. So yeah, I really, really, really like Dungeon. All right, and the last one that we have is Tower. So Tower is also, it has always been sort of one of my favorites ever since Heroes 2, the wizard town, whatever that was called in Heroes 2. I always really liked the Titans and the Arch Magi, and that sort of carried forward for me for Heroes 3 as well. And I feel like Tower is probably even more interesting than the the wizard town was in Heroes 2, because you have like other cool creatures like Nagas, and then the genies and master genies are really, really cool, and that's what really makes Tower fun, especially on Jebba's Cross, is snowballing those genies and just abusing their spellcasting ability to do really crazy stuff. And you know, Tower now, ever since they added those lamps, you know, you can easily break like 115 or 116 if you get a favorable break and a decent stack of genies, and even without mass slow. So I do think that Tower's nice. Titans are amazing if you can ever get them. You know, the snow penalty is a bit annoying, but you know, you can usually deal with it without too much trouble, and especially if you're snowballing genies. And you know, you can still always go for experimental shops or cloud temples, and giants are actually easy to build. They're pretty cheap, and you also have interesting heroes like Solmir, who has the chain lightning specialty. I do really like using Solmir. So yeah, like, I think the biggest reason why I have Tower here is like the fantasy theme is like, I just really always loved the theme of the units. You know, like I mentioned, the Magi, the Titans, like all of those units, just, I don't know, really kind of resonate within me. While I think that maybe Conflux is the most creative in terms of you know, the most interesting as far as like the elemental concept goes, I think I like Tower the most. Just, you know, the combination of their units, I don't know, there's just something about it that has always made me feel good. And yeah, and as far as the gameplay goes, you know, like I said, it's slightly frustrating to deal with the snow, but overall, I do really enjoy playing Tower. Like, there's something really satisfying about using those genie casts and doing crazy fights in the early game when you really can't do with anybody else if you didn't have those genie casts to really buff your damage dealing stack. So yeah, I personally have Tower also at the top here. So that's about it, guys. That's it for this tier list. Thank you guys so much for watching. Do let me know what you think in the comments below. I hope that you enjoyed this video. Don't hate me if you disagree with some of my placements too much. Like I said, this is super opinionated, just based on my own personal preference of what I personally enjoy playing the most, but I would like to hear from you guys which towns you enjoy playing the most and why as well. So on that note, I'm going to end the video. Thanks once again, and do feel free to check out my Twitch stream, link in the description below, and I will see you guys soon. Peace out.